Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand spanking, hanking danking new episode of the Console Log, episode number 53. Past week of October 24th through October 30th, I am joined by my faithful co host, Matthew Gerstmann.
Hi everyone, it is. I'm actually a little bit scared to be here because this is the Halloween edition of the Console Log. We,
Ooh.
I don't know if we've actually intended to theme anything Halloween related, but let's just try to sneak in something spooky about every article.
In week as the bugs of uncaught. No, what is it? Object is not a function is the type error.
Undefined is not a function. Don't forget
Undef-
that.
Undefined is not a function. Ooh. And with that scary note, let's begin the show. Starting off our ghoulish tales, we're going to talk about this really neat article that came out this past week from Smashing Magazine, detailing a great in-depth guide about how to serve legacy code only to legacy browsers. And to extend our Halloween theme, this is how to serve dead code only to dead browsers, because these browsers are dead, but they're the walking dead.
I don't think the code is dead in this case. I think the code is quite alive. Otherwise your Webpack config is wrong.
Yeah, so it's maybe like we're witches and the Walking Dead is the browsers, but
Yeah,
uh,
really, the really thing you should be scared of here is that you have to support IE11, which is less scary and more just probably a sad fact of your day job.
I mean, people definitely dress up as that for Halloween, so it's definitely a valid Halloween
It's
costume.
scary. I mean, I don't know. I get scared every time I have to use Windows, let alone IE.
Mhm. I mean, so the basic idea behind this article is that this is actually a technique I think actually the Meteor framework pioneered earlier this year, where you actually when making, let's say you have Webpack, you actually have two builds in Webpack. One that builds just for modern browsers, so it keeps class as class, it doesn't actually transpile it down. Then you have one build that actually is for these older browsers, so it actually turns classes into other things, makes all this code ES5 friendly. And then there's a technique that you can actually use in your HTML page to know, depending upon the browser, which JS bundle to build. So the newer browsers don't have to deal with all the debt and all the sins of the browsers of past, and the Walking Dead browsers can continue on their merry way.
It's also not just ES6 to ES5, right? It's also polyfills. Those are a really big part. So if you
Yes,
consider the
true.
number of APIs we take for granted today, like promises or fetch, or what else is in
Those are
ES6?
two great ones to start off with.
Yeah, those are. I started really strong, and then I just lost the list. But anyway, it's like those things also take up like a couple kilobytes to polyfill, especially when you're
Yeah.
polyfilling everything. Do you know the number of times I've checked my polyfill file to make sure that we're polyfilling array.includes? Like,
Yeah. Yeah,
because
and it always makes me sad that it's not array.contains, but you can't break the web because of these Walking Dead browsers.
I'm just upset that it's not array.smoosh.
Well, that's a whole nother scary tale around the campfire.
Yeah. So on to our next topic. You know what? You know what's the scariest number, Harry?
Well, this is actually my favorite number.
Well, so the scariest number is 13, and this is two less than
What?
that.
That's that was amazing.
Thank
That
you.
was that was the best observation I've heard all day.
Yeah. So Node version 11
What?
was.
You know what number comes after two, huh? Three. Learned that in math class. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Wait,
Thank you.
wait, get back on topic. Back on topic.
Node version 11 was released, and as you know, 11 is two less than 13, which means I'm just laughing hysterically as I'm talking. This isn't good. Node version 11 was released. It is a new, exciting release. It's Harry. What features does it have? What are
I
you
think the
excited about?
biggest, I think the biggest, most exciting feature of Note 11 is that it includes an upgrade of V8 to version 7. I'm not sure if Node has their releases in sync with V8 releases. They're doing their best to always keep that up to date. But in many ways, when you see that Node jumps a new version, like a new major version of V8, you can tell that a lot of things you're getting for free just because as V8 improves, so Chrome improves, so Node improves. So that actually is going to bring a lot of just like I saw a tweet about how they're adding support for natively having class field instance properties, that syntax, and that's being powered by V8. So if Node has that V8 version, then you have that in Node.
Yeah, so drink your tomato juice, kids.
Jesus. Speaking of drinking tomato juices and milkshakes and just taking over the world, everyone's favorite company whose acronym has a $sign in it, Microsoft's acquisition of GitHub is complete.
They have dissolved the council permanently. The last remnants of the old GitHub have been swept away.
Yeah, well, hopefully not. I mean,
Actually,
Microsoft
no.
has. I mean, to be fair to Microsoft, they've been doing a great job of being more kind to developers worldwide. Um, my biggest fear about Microsoft acquiring GitHub is you'll see more Azure put places, but I'm already seeing that. Like there's already integration that was announced for that. So
Yeah,
um,
I actually don't take issue with this one. I wanted to kid with my Star Wars reference because it was an awesome Star Wars reference. But Microsoft's been doing great open source work, but just between TypeScript and VS Code in the last
mhm.
3 years, just I'm very happy with Microsoft. They can keep up the good work. They are making developers happy.
Yep. Yeah. So I mean, it was
Developers.
developers. The bomber peak has finally hit. Yeah. I mean, it's done. We're not really gonna. Ideally, yeah. Microsoft's been good. Keep doing good. Make sure that GitHub does good. Good. You want to talk about the next one, or do you want me to talk about the next one?
Well, we're going to talk about the platform TM. In this case, it's the Apple platform, the thing that originally all apps on iPhone were going to run under. That is an obscure reference. Anyway, Safari is making some security improvements to target equals blank. What they are doing is they are testing in the technology preview release, I believe it's version 68, that rel equals no opener for improved security. So basically, that means that if you have a target blank link, it will not be able to interface over JavaScript with the original browser window that opened that link. So it makes things in general more secure if you've got like iframe injection or I don't know, weird things going on. Harry?
Yeah. I mean, I have an ESLint rule that always yells at me whenever I have target equals blank, saying to add that rel. So the fact that they're doing it by default means that this ESLint rule now has to uh, know if the browser is Safari ahead. There's no way for it to fix this for me, but I think it's exciting that security is getting better.
Well, you're still going to need to do it for the other browsers anyway.
I know, but I want to be lazy about it.
Yeah, see, I just have the person sit next to me yell at me all day. All they do is look over my shoulder and make ESLint comments out loud.
That always works. And then let's go to the meat and potatoes of this episode. The meat and potatoes.
I
Uh,
don't know what my I don't know how I would respond to that.
you can respond to that either with a memo, or you can respond to that with lazily. Welcome, dear faithful listeners, to the part of the podcast where we talk about React. And if we had actual good podcast production quality, there would be like some Halloween like dun 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 at that moment.
Okay,
But
wait, can I just go on a complete tangent that this just reminded me of? Yesterday I took a Halloween themed workout class where they played the Monster Mash, but with the biggest bass line you've ever heard, and it was just absurd. And that made me
yeah,
think of that. So
yeah, yeah. I saw a tweet. They were like, I saw the most amazing Halloween playlist. It didn't have the Monster Mash on it. It's
you
a
know
staple.
you've never actually heard the Monster Mash. You've only heard a song about the Monster Mash.
I mean, it is a graveyard smash. Anyways, React did way too many things this past week. They were not productive all year. They did nothing at all. Then they just decided for Halloween.
Wait, hold on. Fragments? New context?
Was that this year?
Yeah, that's all this year, dude.
Well, when you put it like that,
What was
I'm pretty
what was the
wrong.
other thing? Suspense. They did that this year. They did
Well, no,
time.
suspense is not done.
Okay, suspense is well. Obviously,
To
they
be
can't
fair,
ship it until after Halloween.
that was a joke. So, but yeah, no, but this week, they definitely upped their game in terms of smashing through that React ceiling. The first thing that they released this week on the 23rd, was that Tuesday, Monday? What was the 23rd? That was Tuesday. All right, so Tuesday of last week, React was like, yo, peeps, heard you like releases. Let's do a release. And they released React 16.6.0. Unfortunately, for this podcast Halloween theme, it's not 16.6.6, where the devil could be in the React. Not
Details.
details. You gotta get those details. What are the new features of React 16.6.6, Matthew?
So I think the main thing is that they've brought back something that looks like the old context API on classes. So everyone was using a render prop type API for context with the new context, and then people in that context were not too happy with this new context, so they put the context in the context in the
I'm shaking
context.
my head so hard right
He
now.
is. I just wanted to, I didn't even know. So anyway, you can now access context from this, and as a result, context type is back.
You like used your context quota, but then still had to say that to actually talk about that thing. That was wonderful.
Right. And then while they were at it, they added React.memo and React.lazy, which are wrappers for functional components that make things special. One of them makes them memo-wise, the other one makes them lazy, much like I am on this afternoon.
Uh, but I mean, even more with React Lazy, what I think is most exciting. It's I think one of the first user land piece of code that starts introducing developers to Suspense, which is part of Concurrent React. Concurrent React is their new name for Async React, but it's similar to. Did you talk about this already? No.
No.
Okay, so it's similar to React Loadable if you've ever used that, in the sense that if you have routes in your application, you don't want to have to load them all up front. You can actually have each route be lazily loaded, and like React Loadable did that. It was cool. It worked great. Where React.lazy makes things even cooler is that you could have a whole tree of React.lazy components, and rather than having multiple spinners as they are loaded, this uses React's suspense feature to actually just show one loader above it. And this is similar to how the error boundary handlers work with React. So you can have this whole tree of lazy components, like lazily load 3 different .js files with Webpack, and then in the UI only show one spinner. So that's very cool.
Yeah,
But go on.
you can go with your butt. You can get the
I was
butt
gonna
in first.
I was gonna move on.
Oh,
Oh,
I was gonna talk about concurrency and parallelism, which is important because so we've been talking about async things and concurrent things a lot in the JavaScript world now, and we're getting locks, we're getting mutexes and semaphores practically. Actually, all I know is we're getting locks. But anyway, things are getting much
semaphore.
more concurrent on the front end. A talk that I would recommend that's an older talk is called Concurrency is Not Parallelism. It's from one of the Go maintainers, so Go the language, Rob Pike. And it's one of those things that I often think back to when I'm thinking about how to process in my head multiple things going on at once. It's kind of a threading version of an event loop talk for you front end people. So anyway, I recommend reading into this because as all these topics get more popular on the front end, you're going to need to know some of those scary scientific words.
Awesome. Good, Rick.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, and also, just a footnote, React Redux had a new release with 5.1, which is also taking advantage of the new features of React 16.6. So be sure to get your upgrades going. I think this is still backwards compatible to React.
You know,
Um,
props to the Redux team because literally every time React does something ridiculous, they're just like, yeah, we're ready for it.
yeah, it's almost like they're talking to each other. What
I
a
don't know. I couldn't believe that.
But so this was cool, React 16.6. But the React team was like, "Hey, we like new things. You like new things. Let's really give you something to sink your teeth into." And they
I was
had
gonna go with the word sink
nice. That's because the jokes make themselves.
with
You know,
anchors.
yeah, with anchors, they're always there, just getting their teeth into you. So
Hold on, before we get to the exciting thing, one time I interviewed a candidate and they kept referring to them as anchor tags. And because I've never heard anyone refer to it as anything other than an A tag, I was just like, what is this anchor tag they're talking about? Oh, wait, it's a hyperlink. That's the actual name for it.
was this Aquaman that you were interviewing?
It was not Aquaman. No.
Could you imagine Aquaman as a wait? Aquaman as a web developer would make Spider-Man very jealous.
I'm sure. I'm sure he would.
That was just a really weird thought. But
Aquaman probably codes using Flow as opposed to TypeScript.
oh, nicely done.
Thank you.
Last week was React Conf. It was originally put on by Facebook and the React team. I think it's now more community focused now, but it's definitely a big React hotbed of innovation and talks and discussions. And the React team was at React Conf this past week, where they dropped some new things.
They dropped hooks. They introduced hooks. Hooks is the new feature. You probably already read about it. Hooks, 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 hooks.
Hooks, 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 hooks. Can you give me a hook about hook? Like Hamilton style?
I'm sorry, I'm gonna throw away my shot.
Oh man, you should have been like, "I'm Aquaman, going fishing time. Gonna drop a lure and hook them mine."
Harry, would you like to give us a TLDR on hooks?
Hooks. So my best way of talking about hooks, so many times saying that word, it is a new feature in React that is additive. It's a new thing. It does not remove anything that currently exists. It doesn't invalidate anything that exists. It fills a hole that existed. So prior to hooks, you had a few ways of making a React component. You had a classical class component that you could add state to and lifecycle methods to. You had a React pure component, which was another class-based method to make a React component that was a little bit more optimized for re-rendering. You had a function component. You might have heard it as functional component. They're rebranding it as a function component because it's a function that's a component. So it definitely makes a bit more sense.
It's no longer functional programming.
But it also never was. It was still just a function component.
So we can get kind of nitpicky on this one, but previously a function component was almost always a pure function.
But functional means nothing.
It means that
everything's functional. Yeah, but it's a misnomer. In any case, you had a function component. With React 16.6, they filled another hole, which with React.pure, so you actually have a pure function component. And the piece that was missing was the ability to have state and lifecycle in a function component. And that is the hole that hooks has solved, which is actually ironic because hooks make holes, and this hook filled one. So it's hard to talk about.
That was a hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah, it really sunk, didn't it? I can hear all the people listening to the podcast groaning on their commute to work. It's hard to fully explain hooks without seeing the code, but if you have a React function component, you can have there's new functions that are exposed by the React package. One of them is useState, and allows you to actually have state in that React function component. There's also one called useEffect that lets you actually deal with lifecycle methods and have effects run in a React component. And it's being introduced as a proposal. They're looking for feedback from the community to see what people have thoughts about that. They've already done an implementation of it, so it's a very forward-thinking proposal, to say so much. Personally, I'm very excited about this. I think it's going to make code much easier to read and write, React code much easier to read and write. I am a little bit concerned about these hook functions being tied to the React library, but I think that's not a big deal in some. I'm most curious to hear everyone's reactions as well, because I know my reaction, but I don't know what's your reaction, Matthew?
So I'm really excited about these. First of all, they make things. They give us a new layer of composition, right? We have this type of functionality that we can add to a component. We've seen so many cool things already. We've seen the platform, which was by Jared Palmer, which is, well, he didn't build the platform, but he built a layer on top of the platform using hooks that lets us do things like get device orientation or get network status. Hilariously, just as a footnote, his GitHub page is using a parody of the AOL logo, which I just love. It just reminds me of being a child, and because that's when AOL was a thing. But anyway, so people are already writing really interesting composable behavior. They're doing interesting things with event listeners that were previously only doable on class components. So I'm really excited about that. One thing I find a little spooky. I just wanted to use that word because it's Halloween. One thing I'm a little nervous about is I feel like there are some bad practices waiting to happen with hooks, and I don't know what those are yet. I want to skip ahead to 6 months from now when we see all of the brilliant and terrible things people do with
Yeah.
hooks, and we know what the best practices are.
And also a big thing about hooks that I didn't say before, aside from it filling a type of component you can write, is it actually produces a new fundamental building block in React applications in the sense that you can now extract stateful behavior. If you had a component that was both updating document.title and doing a API fetch, that was conflated in the same component did mount lifecycle method. With hooks, you can make custom hooks, and you can actually break those things apart and not really have them know about each other, so they're easily to compose. Um,
Yeah, it's a lot nicer than say building a component that provides the window size over a render prop.
Yeah, render props are great. They work, but they add a lot of noise to the development flow because you look at the debug tools, it's there. Whereas with a hook, it's just in line. And a hook, in some ways, lets you, it lets you do inversion of control in a synchronous manner and not in like a delegation manner. Like render props, you
Yeah, I
have
think
to
inversion of
give it a
control confused a
function
lot of.
that. Sorry.
I watched inversion of control confuse a lot of people, even senior developers who just don't come from a front end background. And I think hooks will clear up a lot of that.
Yeah, because like when you have, and like, I mean, you would say a render props is an inversion of control,
Yeah, because
right?
it's the parent providing data to the child
Right. So like yeah, you have
or
the
state.
so hooks let you actually not have to worry about that and just kind of use it in a synchronous manner, which is much more easy to mentally main, just mentally easily to reason about.
Yeah,
So it's out in 16.7 alpha, the spookiest alpha that ever was alphaed.
and
Uh,
Dan Abramov, just because we always like to quote his tweets. It was funny on April Fools. He tweeted, "Mixins are the future of React," and everyone was like, "Ha ha 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 ha!" And then he tweeted a link to that. He's like, "You see the joke now because hooks are like a much better version of Mixins because everything is cyclical."
how did he know about hooks on April 1st? Like it was, did he just like could tell the future?
You know, I think he's involved in the development of them.
Oh, that does explain a lot. That does explain a lot. All right, so I think that's enough React. Let's end the show on a funny note, huh?
Yeah, I'm just gonna jump to some Halloween jokes.
Okay.
Oh wait! We had the list of mistakes in CSS. I do want to talk about those.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't. There's a thing we're gonna add to the overflow links that I realized there was absolutely no way to describe over a podcast, which is the web in 2018. So anyway, just click that tweet and it'll entertain you for 3 minutes.
Okay. Fair enough. Oh yeah, this one I saw. This one was good. So the last but not least, let's talk about. I think this has been around for a while, but I only saw it this past week. On the CSS Working Group wiki, they have on the wiki, the people who actually work on CSS itself, they have a wiki page about. It's a list of mistakes in the design of CSS. So this is the people who actually built CSS. Are like, here are things we regret. So some of these are pretty funny, and the things that I really agree with, such as box sizing should be border box by default, was one that I definitely concur was a mistake. And then speaking of evil, the top and bottom margins of a box should never have been allowed to collapse together automatically, as this is the root of all margin collapsing evil.
It's so confusing.
So bad. But it's a really fun list. Check it out. You'll have a chuckle. You'll have comfort in knowing that you are not alone in being perplexed at
I
some of
like
these
the
CSS
title.
behavior.
Is that these should be corrected if anyone invents a time machine?
Yeah, for absolutely sure. Yeah, one is table layout should be sane. Full stop. That's a big regret right there. All
uh,
right. All
so
right. So
anyway,
that
Harry, why are all mummies workaholics?
why are I don't know.
They're afraid to unwind.
Great.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, wait. Why was the skeleton lonely?
It was shaken in its bones.
He had no body.
Yeah.
Did you hear about the vampire who had to go to the doctor? He was
It,
coughing.
good. Great. Thank you, Matthew, for those jokes. That was lovely. I'm sure all listeners enjoyed that. That was your console log episode number 53. The scariest of all numbers, 53. It's the prime number, right? 53 is prime.
You know, it's 40 plus 13.
God damn it. Uh, Thanks, Matthew. Thanks, listeners.
Thanks, Harry.
53 is indeed the 16th prime number. It's an Eisenstein prime and a Sophie Germain prime, according to the Wikipedia page about the number itself. There is a Wikipedia page about the number 53. That is your console log episode, everybody. See you again next week.